Good afternoon and welcome to Driver's Ed, our last day of content that we'll be going over some loose ends on things that I had hoped to get to but didn't have the time. We'll also finish the topic of road rage, so we'll wait for about 2 minutes and then we'll kind of get into finishing everything up. So hopefully you're having a good day. Sun's out, but it's awfully windy. I do hope that even though we have not started our driving, that you're continuing to drive with parents. If they let you out of the house, that's important that you continue to put into practice things that we've talked about and learned. Show your parents that you've have applied knowledge now, that you can put things to good use. Now, I don't know how long the camera's going to last today because I exchanged the battery about a half hour or so ago and didn't realize that I had the camera on while I was getting a few other things done. These batteries don't last too long, and that's another reason why you don't see me on camera too much, because it does kind of drag down. And the difference between the camera that I have set up and the computer camera, let me just show you. I think this is the computer camera. Boom, look at that. Look how boring that wall looks. Look how much better and brighter. So investing in a mirrorless camera has paid off dividends to have a good picture, and I've enjoyed it. I enjoy photography. So let's kind of get out of the music and get into things. So we're going to kind of finish up with road rage. We had talked about yesterday some of the reasons why people get upset, and I told you that I had a Malcolm in the Middle segment on road rage, and I couldn't find it yesterday, and I didn't have it queued up. So I do have it queued up for today. So while we're waiting for everybody, it looks like we just about have everybody in here, so that's kind of cool. But here is the sitcom, and what you're going to see is that these two women go at each other, and what I want you to see is that their perspective starts to elevate and get worse and worse with each action. So what you have to understand about road rage is that if you do not stop it at its very lowest level of irritation, that irritation is going to go to anger, anger is going to go to madness, and things are going to get worse. And then people are going to act out on that behavior, and they're not going to really like the outcome, and they're going to be surprised that they reacted that way. So let me show you Malcolm in the Middle.
Excuse me. I know you didn't think anyone would catch you, but you just slammed your door into my car. The least you can do is say you're sorry, lady. You don't have to take that tone. It's not like I'm hurting your resale value. I'm sorry. See? Like that.
So you can see that those two women should have stopped right at the initial contact with one of the vehicles. It shouldn't have never gotten to that point. And most of the articles that you provided me probably played out almost the same way, where it was just a minimal incident and then it escalated. And that's the thing that we have to remember about road rage, is that we've got to catch it in its early stages. So let's kind of write down a few things. Write down that it starts in your head. It's a mental process. You look at things differently. Once you get irritated, no longer are you thinking about getting to work, getting home. You become preoccupied with the offense that just took place. And it's usually not solution-based, which means, okay, they cut me off. Okay, they've got their high beams on. What can I do to make the situation better? Okay, do I tip my mirrors to get the glare away? Do I look off to the side of the road? Do I just let them go on their way and I don't speed up and get right on their back end? I don't tailgate them. Usually we're not thinking about making things better. We're thinking about payback. The other thing that you need to remember is that when you do get upset, it takes time to overcome. There's going to be a short-term and a long-term effect to what has happened. So you've got to let your body run its course to get back into the groove of driving. So what I would recommend with most of you, that if somebody does something to you and it really upsets you, you probably should pull over. You're probably not in the best frame of mind to be driving because you don't want to miss traffic lights, signs, lane position. You've got to be spot on. You don't want to be driving poorly. So let the situation, kind of cool down in your head and then go out. If we were to take you out of the vehicle and hook you up to a blood pressure monitor, if we were to take your heart rate and find out what it is, I will tell you physically, inside your body, you're changing. It's not normal. Now, I have an Apple Watch, so I know when I'm going up a flight of stairs that my heart rate's going up. I know the same thing after exercise or eating certain foods like caffeine, that your blood pressure is going to go up. There's muscle tension when you feel stress or feel threatened. And then, of course, how you're going to react to people that do things to you. There could be certain hand signals that are being thrown around inside the car. Hands off the wheel, banging on the dash, banging on the ceiling. Okay, a lot of things going on physically. You've got to calm down. You can't let your emotions get the best of you. So lastly, always think about solutions. Everything that you do with driving, whether it's a driving emergency or if it's road rage, you've got to think about, okay, what do I do in this situation? How can I make things better? And when it comes to road rage, think about it. Did you contribute to the problem? Did you do something that was misinterpreted? Okay, maybe you didn't use your signal and that's why they cut out in front of you, because they assumed you were doing something different. And then after something happens, remember, you can't change it. You can't go back. It's done. It's over with. And payback is never a positive outcome. What you provided me, where people were pulling out, different weapons and verbally abusing people and physically abusing people, you can't take that back. That's going to probably be recorded. That's why I have these videos. And the next one I'm going to show you, this was a newscast out, I think, in Colorado. Okay, this is for the whole world to see. Okay, this has been recorded. This is going to be part of your history. You could be included in a newspaper article. Don't become famous for the wrong things. Okay, so don't let just a moment of flying off the handle affect you for months or maybe years. So let's take a look at what they were trying to do in, I believe it's Colorado. ABC did this, a special that I saw.
We all have it in us, even if we don't know exactly where it is. a limit, a breaking point, a dark place where civilization ends and animal instinct takes over. And there may be no faster way to get there than right here, on the roadways of America at the intersection of velocity and violence.
Oh, we have 2 victims here.
You've seen the stories leading your local news
Another case of road rage.
and polluting YouTube. What feels like a daily diet of road rage reports. Just last week, this shocking video of an incident on a California freeway leading to a multi-car crash.
Call 911, Chris.
Nearly half of all drivers surveyed have experienced some form of road rage. Here in Denver, the mile-high city, drivers have hit new lows. Local officials reporting deadly traffic crashes have been slowly creeping up for several years.
We know you're fed up. So are we.
We came to see for ourselves. It didn't take long for us to find it. Rocky Mountain Rage.
Golly, that guy. He was like almost in our lane.
You want reasons? Look around. The city's rush hour turns freeways into ant farms. It's a stop-and-go sea of brake lights.
Yeah, it's not moving up there.
What typically should be a 30-minute commute can take nearly an hour and a half, enough to turn any driver into a ticking time bomb.
I was surprised at how bad the traffic is in Denver.
It's heavy, it's crowded, and it's aggressive.
Captain Jeff Goodwin of the Colorado State Patrol is fighting the uphill battle against an army of hot-tempered motorists.
Don't touch me!
There is that group of individuals that get up helter-skelter every morning. They're never on time. So now they're running late and they've got to make up that time. So how do they do it? They do it by pushing people out of the way, cutting them off, changing from the inside left lane all the way to the exit ramp right as they get there.
Goodwin believes he's pinpointed the root of the problem. With more than 100,000 people transplanting to Denver every year, it's as simple as too many metal machines, not enough pavement.
I used to think it was something like people cutting you off. But you know, one of the things that people really get angry about, if somebody honks the horn at you because you've sat too long at a light, I think they literally go from the Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde.
Around the country, it's not just gangbangers and street thugs mixing it up. It could be any of us. Take a look at these guys in business attire doing the WWE SmackDown. We showed the good Captain Goodwin some examples of bad behavior, and he provided us some potentially life-saving road rules to help you. Rule number 1, don't make eye contact.
This motorist is out of control. And this victim is doing all the right things.
Just stare ahead, don't engage.
Right. Yeah, the minute you engage, who knows where this goes?
Rule number 2, never approach the window.
All right, wow, okay. This is more than over the top because now you have a gun involved.
So you're gonna pull your gun out? What kind of...
You never know who's packing heat.
Exactly.
Is approaching someone's window ever a good idea?
Never do it.
And most important, rule number 3, you don't always have to win.
Looks like it's gonna be over.
But as we see in this case from Houston, the parties involved just can't help themselves.
And here we go. There you go.
I mean, now they're at full-blown fist fight.
Right, this is what happens. It gets worse. The longer this goes, the worse it's gonna get.
It looks like they just need to win the argument.
That's what it is.
It was 4:15 when we hit the road with Goodwin and his team. They prowled the interstate looking for bad behavior.
We're looking for aggressive drivers.
Triggers. Which often lead to the road rage we see on the news.
This is a 75 mile.
Well, we're doing 17 and a 75 at rush hour.
I got a lady who was texting if you want to pull her over.
Within minutes, Goodwin's team has spotted a common breed, a texter at the wheel. Goodwin says distracted driving, the #1 offense that sends drivers into road rage.
And how does that end up leading to road rage?
Well, when she's texting, she's not paying attention to everybody else out here.
Next, we cross paths with a Leadfoot speedster, the deadliest kind of aggressive driver.
I could see him in the rearview mirror weaving in and out. He was trying to find that opening.
And that's when people get mad.
Right.
It was now 5:45, the road rage witching hour.
Yeah, we're pulling out.
Goodwin says the peak time for trouble. And the cops had busted this aggressive driver for skipping the off-ramp and blazing her own trail altogether.
Right now, there's a warrant for your arrest.
Her prize? Some new bracelets and a ride in the fast lane to the county clink.
She doesn't have a valid driver's license either, so that's been canceled and denied, so she shouldn't be driving anywhere.
We'd found ourselves at a notorious hot spot.
So this is the frontage road where we have a lot of our issues.
And got a dose of full frontage fury.
So people will be frustrated, they'll come off the frontage road, and then they actually will do this, believe it or not. They will drive here,
Holy cow, this is so steep.
and they will find that steep drop down to the interstate, and they will bounce their way back down into Interstate 25. All because they're angry about sitting in traffic. Off-roading on I-25.
Yeah.
As Friday rush hour traffic mounts once again, we spot this guy who thought he could make up time bypassing all the drivers ahead of him, riding along the road's shoulder. But he's going nowhere fast today.
Go over here. Hey, sir. Do me a favor and stay in your car while we do this business, okay? You passed about 7 or 8 cars going alongside them on the right. You went over the white shoulder. That's not a lane for turning. It's not a lane for passing.
Like many road rogues, this guy's idea of defensive driving is making excuses for his alleged moving violations. He even called 911 to complain about being pulled over.
He stopped me first on the train track with the train coming down the road.
And now that he's caught, he's upset, just is not in agreement at all with what's going on here. So that's his beef.
There goes the guy. There he goes.
Next, check out this blue truck. The driver has jumped the median, passing up other cars, hightailing it the wrong way into oncoming traffic. Captain Goodwin pulls him over, hand on the holster.
What was it? You got kids in your car.
I haven't seen anybody drive that aggressively in years. He's doing about 90 miles an hour. He damn near hit several cars back there.
I charged him with reckless driving. He just didn't plan on having any law enforcement around to stop him today.
You don't think it's just a Y chromosome thing?
You see a lot of aggressive driving from both sexes.
Everybody drives crazy.
Yeah, it's
So as you can see, it's a real problem, especially in a heavy metropolitan area where they're trying to make up time. And you can see that most of the people that were pulled over, they felt that they were victims. They're trying to blame the police officer. So you can really see that it's an attitude problem. And these are the people that you're going to encounter on the road. And you've got to be so careful because you can't, let them fly off the handle, and you can't reason with these type of people. So remember, if you do report somebody, as we said yesterday with texting, you can do it while you're moving. You've got to pull over to the side of the road, or preferably a parking lot or a driveway, and then make a phone call and then warn the police that there is a issue on the roadway. So that is road rage. One of the topics that we were not able to discuss was manual transmission. And I have found over the years that when I teach a class, there may be 3 of you. So if you want to drop a comment in the YouTube section so I can see it in the next minute or two so we can speak on this, how many people have actually driven a manual transmission? We know that probably 5% of the vehicles that are sold on a dealership lot now are manual transmission. Very difficult to find one. As you can see in the picture, and I love the looks of older vehicles, that all your cars in the 50s and 60s were manual transmission. Then we started to see a slight change in the 70s and 80s as more moms got back into the workforce and kids had cars at high school, and you just wanted to learn how to drive quickly and then get a license. And that's the easiest way to learn is automatic. If you think you're a good driver, oh, good. I see a few people have. I will tell you, if you can drive an automatic vehicle and you think you're just going to pop into a manual transmission and pick it right up in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you're fooling yourself. It's going to make you look like a beginner driver again. Now, the nice thing about learning in an automatic is that you're going to know all the laws and techniques of what to do. So your learning curve is going to be much slower, much faster, switching over to a standard transmission vehicle. But if you were only to learn in a manual transmission vehicle from the get-go, I will tell you, it's going to take you way more than the 40 hours to get really good at driving, as the state is required with you right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you an overview of some of the key components and terminologies with driving a manual transmission, and then car.com. This is something that was online. A professional driver has explained it, because I don't have a manual transmission right now. I used to have one. I actually did use it for driver's ed back probably about 25 years ago, but I haven't had one to teach in for that time frame. But I enjoyed it, and I think the students enjoyed it, and I hopefully someday get back to it. So let's kind of go through terminology. So I want you to write down the 3 parts of a vehicle that is dependent on movement in a manual transmission. Is learning how to use the clutch, how to use the shift gear pattern on your shifter, and when not to use the accelerator. So driving a manual, these 3 things have to be coordinated at the right time and the right amount. Okay, it's just not pushing down on the clutch pedal, just not pushing down on the accelerator or letting up on the accelerator. There has to be a certain point that your foot is finding on these pedals to get the car to continue to move. So the first thing, let's talk about the clutch. The clutch is to the left of the brake pedal, and it must be fully depressed down. We call that disengagement. And it breaks the connection between the engine and the transmission. So when the clutch is pushed all the way in, the car cannot stall. When you let up on the clutch pedal, the transmission will now start to be engaged and the vehicle will start to move. So all I want you to write down is that the clutch is to the left of the brake, and it must be used for shifting, and it must be fully engaged before you shift. You don't want to not be engaged and try to use the shift, because you'll grind the gears. Now, don't have to write anything down with the shift. Just know that this is the shift, and there are different patterns on different vehicles. That's why I don't want you to write anything down here. Just know that there's like 3 or 4. Oh, I'm echoing again. Okay, let's see. Let's see if I can come down a little bit on volume. Okay. So on the gear shift pattern, it all depends whether you have a 3-speed, 4-speed, 5-speed. It depends on the vehicle that you're driving. But all I want you to write down with the shift is that depending on the speed that you're traveling will determine what gear that you should be in. So like 3rd gear is going to be for a certain speed on that particular car. Just like 4th gear, 5th gear will be different on different cars. Now it's going to be relatively somewhat near the different speeds that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but just know that you've got to be like in 3rd gear, you've got to be around 30 miles per hour. Now this is the most important, probably the one, I'm not sure if I threw this on the file or not, so write this down. Friction point. That is when you're letting up on the clutch pedal, the point where the engine and the transmission is now engaged. So when you're shifting, the clutch goes down and you shift, and then when you let up on the clutch, the gas pedal has to go down. So it's that halfway point pushing down on the gas pedal, the halfway point of lifting up on the clutch, that we find this friction point. You can feel the movement of the vehicle. There's going to be a definite feel that the car wants to go forward. You're going to hear the change of the engine. It's going to be a more deeper growl of the engine. It will gear down lower. And most people don't realize this, so I want you to write this down too. The easiest way to practice finding a friction point is when you're doing it in reverse. Reverse is geared much lower than first gear, which means that it's more difficult to stall it. And the other thing about a friction point is you should get very comfortable finding the friction point, because anytime your car is going uphill and you stop the vehicle, you let go of the brake pedal to go back to the gas, your car is going to roll back if you don't let your clutch out to the friction point. So if you keep the clutch all the way down and you've got your foot on the brake, the minute you take your foot off the brake to go to the gas to move the car will roll back. And what we have learned to do, at least those that are experienced manual transmission, standard transmission drivers, is that you use your parking brake or your emergency brake, which will prevent you from rolling backwards. So that gives you time to take your foot off the brake, go to the gas pedal, let up on the clutch, and just as you start to engage, then the car is going to start to go forward. And then you drop your emergency brake and you won't hit people behind you. And I don't know if we see that in the video. I don't have to write this down. I just wanted to show you, just made it kind of simple for gears. First gear is somewhere between, dead stop and around between 10 and 15 miles per hour, and then 15 to 25 for second, and 25, 35 third. Fourth is above 35, up around 50 or higher. That is kind of low, 45, but you're going to be up around 55 or so when you're in fifth gear. And actually they have more than 5 gears in a lot of cars now. And the other thing is you're going to shift down lower at a lower gear when you're going up a hill or going down. So we call that downshifting. Downshifting is when you go from fifth gear to fourth, fourth to third, third to second. It gives you better control of your speed, and it does slow the car down more effectively, so especially in bad weather. So if you're in a manual transmission and you're driving in the wintertime, rather than brake all the time, which may make the tires kind of lock a little bit, you may want to kind of downshift and have better control of your vehicle that way. So let's take a look at cars.com and their description of how to drive a manual transmission. And now you'll be able to visualize. If you've never done this before, what I've just talked about, it just probably doesn't make any sense at all. So this person does a very good job of really breaking down the basics of finding the friction point and using your gears. So we're going to kind of watch him.
So you want to drive a car with a manual transmission? Well, I have bad news and good news. The bad news is there are fewer models on the market now than ever before that have a proper 3-pedal manual transmission. The good news is the ones that do offer the feature are easier to learn on than old cars were. Whether you're going to drive a new car or an old car, I commend you, and I'll get you started. Now, the first part of the lesson is I'm going to explain what's going on when you're operating the manual transmission. Now, it isn't absolutely necessary. It could just be about a stick and a pedal. But what I found is people tend to grasp this a little bit faster, learn faster if they understand what is actually going on under the surface. A car with a gas or diesel engine has a transmission with multiple gears for the same reason a bicycle does. A good bicycle, not one of those retro hipster one-speed bikes, please. The idea behind having these gears is you can pedal only so fast, and you'll reach a certain point, and to go faster, you need to shift up. Same thing is true with a car's engine. Let's take a look at the tachometer. The tachometer is a gauge that shows engine speed, and essentially all cars have them, even automatics. You just don't pay attention to it. It'll be marked typically 1, 2, 3, 4, or in some cases 10, 20, 30, but the idea is multiplied by some number that is the revolutions per minute of the engine. And when you hit the gas a bit, you'll see the needle goes up as the engine speed increases. Typically, though, a gas engine will run only up to about 6,000 to 8,000 RPM. It depends on the car, and there are some exceptions. In this car, it's about 7,400 RPM where you see a red line begin. And that red line is called the red line. And the engine is not supposed to run in the red line because it can be damaged. Now, newer cars are less likely to actually incur damage than older ones, but still, that's not where you want to be. So, if you want to go faster and faster in a car, you need to be able to shift to the next gear. Simple, right? just like a bicycle? Well, there's one area where it's not like a bicycle. On a bicycle, when you start out, you just pedal 1, 2, 3, 4. You can start from a standing stop. An engine, on the other hand, has an idle speed of typically 750 RPM. So it'll run from 750 RPM to, in this case, 7,400. But below 750, nothing. So what's happening is, when you're sitting still, your engine is going 750 RPM, and your transmission and the gears are not moving at all. And you've got to get them going together at the same speed. And that is going to be your job through the use of the clutch pedal. And you are going to suck at it. It's going to be hilarious. To me, you're going to hate it, but I'm laughing just thinking about it. But here, you probably ought to laugh at it too, because you're going to be bad. But if you stick with it and practice, you're going to get better. So let's start with the pedals. You'll see the extra one here, the third, that is the clutch pedal. But it looks like there are 4 pedals in this car, and that is because this one is, it's technically called the dead pedal, but a better word for that is the footrest. It doesn't really do anything. And footrest is a good name because that is what you're supposed to do, and that is rest your foot there. Do not leave your foot on the clutch pedal. The whole point behind the clutch is use it, and then you get off of it. Put your foot on the dead pedal or the footrest. Here's an important tip before you even get started. When you're operating the clutch pedal, you need your whole leg. You're not putting your heel down, anchoring it like you might with the accelerator pedal and just tilting at the ankle. You need your whole leg. It's a little bit more like a brake pedal in that regard. Also, when you apply the pedal, you always go all the way down to the floor and release all the way out. Always step in all the way, release all the way, and when you're not using the clutch, rest on the dead pedal. Now, before you even head out, if you're just learning how to drive a manual transmission, think ahead and wear sensible shoes. You don't need fancy driving shoes or anything, but here's a tip. Don't wear a big clunky shoe, and don't wear anything with a big heel. And don't judge me. I'm trying to help you, and it's free. Once you learn how to drive, you can wear whatever you want, but for training purposes, be sensible. Now let's get to know the shifter, or the stick, which is how you put the transmission in the different gears. The pattern for the forward gears is pretty much the same in everything, and you'll see it either on top of the knob or somewhere nearby. Typically, the difference between vehicles is really just about how many forward gears it has. This car has 6. Older cars may stop at 4 forward gears. Some cars these days have 7. All just affect how much shifting you'll be doing. Now, one of the most important things you need to know is when it's not in gear, and that is neutral. Neutral position is straight in the middle of all of these, and you'll know it's in neutral when the stick wobbles left and right. Now, I'm going to step on the clutch pedal, even though the engine is off, and you'll see now I'm in first gear, up and to the left. Now notice it doesn't slide left and right. In neutral, there's my wobble. So first, second is below, to the right and up is third, and so on. It's pretty simple stuff. Now, all cars are going to have a reverse gear. That can be in a different location. It used to be up and to the right for a lot of cars. Nowadays, you're starting to see them on the left. The best cars will have a little lockout, like this lift collar, that prevents you from going into reverse unless you really mean it. And when you're practicing going into first, once you get a little bit good at that, you can start doing the same thing with reverse. Okay, you want to find an empty or nearly empty parking lot or road, and it's important that it be flat because you're going to be practicing taking off in first gear and reverse, and the effects of gravity can just complicate things. You need to start the car. When you start a manual transmission, it's always important to make sure it is in neutral. Wiggle that stick. And in newer cars especially, it's necessary, not just good practice, to step on the clutch pedal because that will allow the engine to start. Without stepping on that pedal, you can turn the key all you want. It wouldn't have started with a new car. So when you take off from a stop in a car with a manual transmission, you are essentially trying to coordinate the application of the gas and the release of the clutch pedal, or the engagement of the clutch. But what I'm going to do is have you practice first without stepping on the gas at all. Just use the clutch pedal to get a feel for the clutch engagement. Now, when you lift off the pedal, you're engaging the clutch. When you step on, you're disengaging. I'm just going to call it clutch in and clutch out, because that's the simplest thing to remember when the time comes to actually do it. So what you'll do is you're going to watch my feet, watch everything I do. You're stepping on the clutch pedal, all right? Stick goes into first. I happen to have the brake on, so I'm going to take the parking brake off. And then you're just going to slowly let that clutch pedal out. See what I'm doing right now? Now, if you have a newer car, this is actually a little easier, because the engine control unit, the computer, senses the load and will compensate and give you a little bit more gas. So here you can see my foot's off the pedal. I'm in first gear and I'm moving. Pretty simple stuff. Every car is different. I'm going to do it again for you. Here's how we stop. I've got my foot over the brake, clutch in, and I pull the shifter out of first into neutral and come to a stop. All cars are different. What you're doing is you're getting a feel for where the clutch engages. In some cars it's lower in the pedal travel, like close to the floor, and some it's higher up. All cars are at least a little bit different. So again, clutch in, first gear, let it out slowly. And there you go. You putter around. You can putter around a little bit in first gear if you want to. We'll discuss whether or not we drive in first gear in a bit. So clutch in, stick into neutral, brake, we stop. Now it's actually the same situation for going in reverse, aside from the gear being different. Clutch in, I'm lifting the collar as necessary for this, putting it in reverse, and slowly letting that pedal out. Now, I am looking behind me and I have a backup camera, so I don't want it to look like I'm just blindly backing up. There we go. And we're moving. Now you might find that, I'm going to stop now, ready? Remember, clutch in, brake, and take the stick into neutral. Reverse gear tends to be a little bit faster than first because it's the only one you got. So it will feel a little bit different. You're going to want to practice with that too. Now, having gotten a feel for the clutch application, I'm going to show you how we apply the gas and release the clutch at the same time. And it lets you do the same thing you just did, but faster. Here we go. Clutch in, first gear. Now, watch my feet. I'm going to add some gas and release the clutch, and we're moving in first gear. You can hear we're moving faster this time. Okay, same as last time. Clutch in, braking, stick back into neutral. Now, you probably want me to tell you what RPM you should be going when you release the clutch to take off. I can't tell you that. Reason being, first of all cars are different. I want to say it's going to be around 2,000 RPM just to get you going. But first, all cars are different. And second, I don't want you focusing on the tachometer. You're much better off getting a feel for this just by doing it. And I feel the same way about when we get to the point where we're shifting through the higher gears as well. So we did it once. Let's do it again. Ready? Clutch in, into first gear, adding a little gas, letting out the clutch. Okay? Now, let me give you one tip that I think is one of the most useful things that I've found from instructing people on how to drive manual transmissions, and that is there's a notion that this has to be the perfect synchronized balletic application and release, perfectly even, and that's actually not true. What I've found is a lot of people find the process a lot easier while they're learning if they partway through releasing that clutch, they just, if it starts to grab, just hold for a second and then release the clutch the rest of the way. I'm going to try and do that again so you can see what I'm doing. Rather than just trying to robotically go in with the gas and out with the clutch. It's you're applying, you come out a bit with your clutch foot. See my hand here. Wait a second. When it starts to grab, just give it a half second and then release the rest of the way. Here's what I'm doing. Ready? Kind of hard to see, I know, but maybe you understand from what I'm describing. And the thing with that is you got to be a little bit careful about overdoing it. You cannot take forever to get your foot off the clutch pedal. What you're trying to do is go from clutch in to clutch out reasonably quickly, and you don't want to do what's called riding the clutch, where you're kind of controlling the car's speed by how much you're letting the clutch slip. That's bad news, and it wears the clutch really quickly. But on the other hand, this one tip seems to help people an awful lot. Now, you'll notice if you do things real slowly, clutch in, first gear, if you do things slowly, you can give it less gas. Here we go, ready? I'm hardly giving it any gas. It's not much different from when I didn't use the gas at all, right? If you want to take off faster, you're going to have to give it more gas. For example, clutch in, first gear. See that? Much faster. Same thing's true if you're on a hill, and I'm going to address hills in a bit too. If you're on a hill, uphill I should say, you're going to have to give it more gas to get you going. Now, what can go...
So hopefully this gave you a different perspective of driving a manual transmission. Don't shy away from ever learning, but as he said, get to a parking lot, preferably with no cars around. I wouldn't do it on a back road because really you're only going to be going straight. It makes sense to go someplace where you're going to have to slow down, make a turn, speed up, slow down, make a turn. And I wouldn't put myself in a traffic situation until I know for sure that I'm not going to stall the vehicle, because there's nothing more aggravating for people, and they will lay on their horn behind you, that if you're stalling the vehicle, they're going to beep at you. So take away the stress. So do all your learning in a parking lot. He also talked about reverse. I forgot to mention how there's a different way to get the car into reverse, so remember that. And I thought he did a pretty good job of really explaining it. I would say that most people that took the time, probably if you're decent at driving, maybe after a half hour, you could probably get out onto the road. But anything less than that, I think you're really rushing things. And really, the longer you stay on back roads and parking lots, give yourself maybe an hour or two, and then worry about like going through Durham, Dover, getting up on the highway, because you don't want to make mistakes. You don't want to make mistakes in a standard, because it'll cause your mind to shut down, and you'll start doing things that you normally wouldn't do in an automatic. So that's just kind of an overview of manual transmission. Now, the last thing that I want to cover, and this is more for you to save money and to be safe around filling stations. It's amazing. I'll teach a class and I'll ask how many people have never gone to a filling station and put fuel in a car. And I always have 2 or 3, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, because usually the driver wants to do it, and some filling stations now say that you have to be a licensed driver or over 18 to do it. With the driver's ed sign on, they don't mind. Even if they have that sign up, they let us do it because they know it's a learning process. So I always like taking people to a filling station and just to remind them of certain things. So we're going to kind of go through a few things here. So I want you to write down a few things. Hopefully it will help you save money. Anytime that you have your foot on the gas pedal, you're using fuel. So you don't want to waste fuel. So how to save money is not to keep on filling up. It makes sense. You don't want to be going to the gas station 3 times a week. Maybe you can cut back on the way that you drive and only have it 2 times a week. So the first 2 things: idling excessively, meaning you're in a parking lot, there's no reason why the car is on, you just have it on. That's wasteful. Aggressive driving isn't just speeding, it's the quick acceleration at stop signs. You're just quick off the line. Okay, so your RPMs, like he mentioned, I forgot to mention RPMs with the manual transmission, but the higher the RPMs, the more power your car needs, so the more fuel it's going to take. So avoid the excessive quick starts and don't wait long to brake. You want to brake early. Now with cruise control, this is what I want you to write down. This is probably going to be the most beneficial thing on this slide. It's getting warmer now. What they have found through studies is that when your car is going 35 miles per hour or higher, you should probably have your air conditioning on and the windows up. But if you put your windows down when you're going at speeds lower than 35 or really like lower than 30, it's going to be better than having your air conditioning on. Because if you're going around 20 miles per hour in a heavy traffic area, you're just using way too much fuel with the air conditioning. So put down your windows. Lose the roof rack just means anything like canoes, kayaks, bikes, anything that you put on top of your vehicle is going to create wind resistance, which is going to cut back on your gas mileage. The backing off the bling means is putting on spoilers, putting on extra wide tires. Anytime that you change the body of your vehicle, you're changing the aerodynamics of a car. And even though it's just 1 or 2 miles per gallon, over a week, over a month's time, that does add up to a few dollars. And right now gas is cheap. So most people probably aren't worried about what they're getting for gas mileage. But believe me, and I think I filled up probably, because I haven't driven that much. I think the last time I filled up was 2 weeks ago. And I think it was like $1.80 or something like that. But there was a time back about 10 years ago that gas was right around $3.60, $3.70. It was almost hitting $4 a gallon. So there is some fluctuation. So when you have a car that takes 15, 20, 25 gallons, you could see a change of 30, 40 bucks just filling up in one of these larger vehicles. So we want to conserve fuel. Keep your tires inflated is probably the number one reason of getting better roll to your car. So that's going to give you better gas mileage. So check your PSI, pounds per square inch, on your tires. Remember, we can open up our door and see it on the door jamb. It's telling us what we should have. That's going to help gas mileage. Putting the right type of oil so your engine is performing at its maximum efficiency. Very, very important. You did this with your homework assignment of knowing the grade of gas that you need to put into your car. You put something that's too low, it's not going to be running correctly and you're going to be consuming more fuel. So most cars need about 87, 89. If you got a V6, V8, they're going to probably want to push you to, the high octane 93, 94. So just make sure you're putting in the right type. Gas prices are usually their lowest in the middle of the week, and usually try to get it in the morning. Gas, it's stored in barrels underneath the ground, and what we have found when temperatures get higher or lower, there's going to be condensation, and you may start getting not the best type of gas when it gets to be warm. It's better when it's cool in the morning. So there it is. Gas is more dense when it's cold, so fill up at night, early morning, not so much midday. Look at gas stations that are currently being used, that are getting that fresh fuel. And we don't have to worry so much about contaminants anymore. They're doing a pretty good job of regulating and testing gas as it goes, putting in, plastic, more or less, storage tanks underneath the gas stations now. Back 30, 40 years ago, it was a metal holding tank, and that's when you would get rust and dirt and debris. And that's why you have a gas filter, is to get out all the contaminants in your gas. Don't get gas just off a highway. These places know you need it really bad, so they're going to be charging 20 to 30 cents more per gallon. So find an exit that has a blue service station sign on it, and you may have to go 4 or 5 miles off the ramp to get to some of these places, but it'd be well worth it, especially if you're going to be spending an extra, 15, 20 bucks. That'd be enough maybe to get lunch. Websites are always good. My car used to have a app that would check all the gas stations in the local area and tell you what the gas price is. And if you were to hit the button indicating which gas station that you wanted to go to, it would actually kick in the GPS and it would actually take you there. So you not only knew what the price is, but you also knew how to get there if you're in an unfamiliar area. So cars are getting equipped with all this technology, and it's really, really beneficial. I couldn't find this video, but I had a kind of a video of people just kind of messing up, filling up with gas. So let's kind of go through some of the steps that you want to take. If you don't like the smell, some gas stations give paper towels or gloves that you could use. So when you're grabbing the handle, it's not going to, give you that gassy smell when you get back in the car. Definitely never smoke around a vehicle. It's been a while since I've seen someone outside of a car smoking. You just don't want to do that. Now, the cell phone thing, sometimes cell phones, and I've got a lot of cameras and mics going on right here. Yesterday and today has been a little bit of a drier day. Static electricity can ignite when you open up your gas tank. So when you go out to the side of the car, write this down. When you go to the side of your car, make sure when you touch metal, okay, before you open up your gas flap. You want to get that little spark, that little discharge of static electricity. You want to get rid of that before you even get near the gas tank, because there still could be some fumes, okay, some gas that could ignite. So you don't want that to happen. And I used to have a video where it showed a girl that was messing with her sweater. She was pulling it down or whatever, and it created static electricity. And then when she grabbed the pump handle, there was some fumes, and it actually ignited on her. So read the instructions. When you pull up to the gas pump, remember when you take a look at your instrument panel and you take a look at your fuel gauge, there's going to be an arrow pointing to which side the pump needs to be. So look for the arrow on your gas gauge. Is it pointing left on the driver's side? Is it pointing right on the passenger side? When you do pull up, think about the width of your door. You don't want to pull up too close to the pump when you open up the door, where you're going to hit either the pump, or sometimes you're going to see that there's going to be a metal rail that will prevent cars from crashing into the overhang or the pumps. But that's about 3 feet. This is where you can open up the door. You're not going to be hitting anything. You're going to be able to maneuver between the car and the fuel inlet and putting the nozzle back onto the gas tank. So notice that the nozzle on the right is pointing up. When you pull it out, you always want to pull it out so your hand is down low. The metal nozzle is always pointing up, because there's still going to be some fuel still in the handle. Okay, so anytime that you take that nozzle handle and you tip it down, there's going to be drips of gas, and that's going to get on your foot. And if someone's smoking on the outside, maybe if they drop some ash or their cigarette, it could ignite. So it's wise. And also put it back in the cradle, having the nozzle up. And that's basically just some tips on getting fuel. Remember, don't leave it unattended. A lot of times they've taken out there used to be a metal strip that you could actually, when you started pumping, you can set a lever, a little flip indicator that would allow you to pump without having your hands on the nozzle. And a lot of gas stations have done away with that. So just remember that. They say a lot of times don't round up to the nearest dollar, or a round number. Just let it be wherever it stops. I kind of always go up to the nearest 10 cent because it can handle a little bit more. But be very careful that you don't want it to be spilling out all over you. A couple other things at nighttime, make sure that if you've turned off your lights when you pulled into the gas station, that you always turn your lights on when you pull away, because there is going to be light at the gas station. So a lot of times as you pull away, you think, oh, I can see, I think I've got my lights on. You might not. So make sure that you always have them on. Make sure you check your mirrors and over your shoulder when you pull away from a gas pump, because it is a very active area. A lot of people do not just get gas at a filling station. They may be going in to use the restroom. They could be going in to get some food. So if you're pulling away blindly without looking left, right in your mirrors, then you could have an incident in the gas station. And as we said before, when you get into your vehicle, make sure that you lock it. Anytime you're getting in and out of your vehicle, people could be watching you. People could be wanting to get into your vehicle, so look around. You know, who's around me? Is it safe? Okay? You can't take anything for granted. So that is the topic of filling up with fuel. Now, I'm going to get back to this. Let's see if this is the state manual that you are supposed to download. It's behind me right now. I guess I could, well, no, I can't move it. It's kind of locked in. So what I want you to do, I'm on page 15 right now of it. I started to go through it. So make sure you have downloaded this. Make sure that, and I'm going to go through, right? I'm going to go just a few pages so you can just take a look. Scan, and like I said, it's a very short read. So you should be able to read it tonight, read it tomorrow. The questions aren't just on this manual. It's really from your notes. It's really from the textbook. The information that you got. So don't think the final tomorrow is going to be straight from here. So here's a section that we talked about, I think on the second week, vehicle inspection, about titling, adjusting your mirrors. We had a whole day or two on airbags and seat belts. So you can see as we're going through, all this is important information. So once again, kind of go through, highlight the information. Okay, taking snow off the top, that's a law now. It's a $500 fine. So just kind of make sure that you know these things. Right of way, the speed limits. So kind of go page by page, and that's going to help you with what we're going to cover tomorrow. Section 6 is a big section, so if you want to write that down. It's not going to be heavy on signs like you had on your midterm, so don't worry about that. There will be some signs, but it's not going to be heavy on signs. It's going to be more on what we've covered from the midterm up to where we are now. So just be familiar with the colors, some of your basic shapes. There's the shared turn lane. Okay, we talked about being on the highway and easy pass. We talked about changing directions, pulling into a driveway. I don't think we talked about U-turns, but I guess they give just a little bit of information right here on a U-turn down here at the bottom on page 25. Remember, you're looking for signs to see if it's legal or not. Intersections, yielding, roundabouts we've covered. We covered a section on parking. Where is it illegal to park? And there's the list of things. And I'm not going to test you on all of these, but one or two may be on, so you should know that. So there's angle and perpendicular. Using our eyes, inattention blindness, change blindness we talked about. Our following distance we have here for space management. So this is all stuff that we've talked about. So hopefully, and I really didn't test a lot on this. Most of my PowerPoints were built upon the older manual, and this is just like a third of what the older manual was. So you're getting a lot more information that I gave you than what you've got in this manual. But it's still good to look over it. Tire blowout, so these are the driving emergencies that we talked about. We talked about this week about handling pedestrians, knowing when to stop, people with guide dogs and canes, people that are on bicycles, giving them that 3 feet. That's going to be here on page 36. Dimming our lights. We had a section on motorcycles and slow-moving vehicles, larger trucks. So that's on page 37. There's your no zone that we talked about. We didn't talk about animal-drawn vehicles. So you may want to just take a look at that. You can see it's just one paragraph. So in some rural areas, drivers may be sharing the road with animal-drawn vehicles. So we talked about separation, and we talk about compromise. So that's what they're talking about right here. So never use your horn or rev the engine. That could scare the horse. So that's there. Emergency vehicles pulling over and stopping. We talked about the pullover law. So we did that. Work zones we talked about. I'm not going to test you on what the fine would be, but just follow the direction that they're giving you. We talked about what to do at police stops, how to behave, what to do. And then there's questions. They only give you 11 questions, which I don't think is much. So I don't know who's calling. So I'm going to put that off. I apologize for that. But that's only 11 questions. So I don't think the 11 questions are that helpful. So what I've done, and I'm only going to show you a little bit of it right here. Okay, right here, I have a video that's on the YouTube channel. Okay, so this would be the first question. An applicant for a New Hampshire driver's license must furnish to what? So I left it blank, and then I'm going to give you the answer. Then another question is going to come up. If you're a resident of New Hampshire and want to drive a motor vehicle, you must have a valid New Hampshire what? And then I'll give you what the answer is. So I've done a video. I think I've got about 80 questions. If you go back to Peace, Love, and Safe Driving and check on the videos, this video is listed. So there's a video I've already made. I've got it going right now just a little bit to show you what it is. If you want to use this to help you, because some of these questions will be on the final, this would be the way that we're going to review. Now, I'm just going to stop it right here so you don't see the answer to this one. But I would recommend you to go online tonight and then just take your computer and at your own pace. So like right now, I have frozen it. So all I want you to do is to kind of look at the question, write down what you think the answer is. I'm not going to give you multiple choice on this review right here. So either you know it or you don't know it. So if you got it wrong, okay, I would write the question down and then restudy it later tonight and tomorrow. Okay, now I'm going to restart it and show you what the answer is. So there's the answer, the DMV within 10 days. Okay, so now the next question is going to come up, and then what you should do is you should freeze it. So I just froze it. Do you know what the answer to this question is? If you do, that's great. That means you've learned something. If you don't get it right, then you don't know what it is. So this is the way that you should study. It's almost like having, flashcards with the answer on the back. So you've written down the question, you got the answer on the back. So I've got this video. I'm not going to let it go because it goes for about 17 minutes. I think it's more beneficial if you do it at your own pace and then go from there. So let's go back to this. So here we are at the end. We have covered every single topic that they could throw your way on a driver's exam for the state. I will tell you that my test tomorrow is 2 to 3 times more difficult than the state test. Okay? So if you're getting in the low 80s and you're really bummed at that, be proud. Because I will tell you that you're going to go to the state exam well prepared. Okay? It is not going to take you any time to get through the state exam. Now, if you do not score well, I want you to score above a 65. Between a 65 and a 75, you're going to have to take a retest. If you get a 75 or above, I'm going to pass you if you have your homework in. If you don't have your homework in, between a 75 and 80, you're going to get retested. So you're getting about 5 points for having everything completed by tomorrow. So some of you have been checking with me and you've done a good job. So you've got that. So a 75 is going to be a clear. You're done the classroom. And then I will see you on Saturday to hand in the book. And then we'll just wait for our driving to begin. But some of you probably won't do that well. And you may be around a little bit longer showing me you know this material. That's okay, as long as we get to that point eventually. So study hard. And good luck tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So at 4 o'clock, this is what you're going to see. I'm going to stay on camera. And if you want to text me on your phone, if you don't use your phone, if you do the test on your computer, you can still use your phone to text me and say, Mr. Toll, question 32, what do you mean by? I'm going to be around that I'll be able to answer that for you. Okay, that's how we're going to do it. So if you have any questions, text me tonight or text me tomorrow. I don't care. I'll get back to you. But for the most part, I've enjoyed having you guys. You've been pretty good. I've looked at the screen. The few questions that I've given you while I'm teaching, you provided some answers, whether it be on screen in YouTube or on text messages. And for the most part, 3/4 of you did pretty good with the homework. Okay? There's still 4 or 5 of you that a little bit late or a little bit lacking on getting things completed. But you're still here. I see 17 people are still watching, so I think that's great. So that is it for today. Study tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So have a good night.